Good morning, guys. How are you doing? If you're hopping on today for this coffee chat, it's at a different time than normal. So I have my coffee and I'm going live much earlier. Usually it's at noon. If you're hopping on, say hey, tell me where you're from. Shoot me an emoji to let me know you're on. And if you're watching the replay later, be sure to hashtag replay so I can come back and chat with you and see if you have any questions and respond to them. So I'm glad you're joining me today. We are smack dab in the middle of National Diet Month, is what I call it. So we've been talking about a lot of diets in our series leading up to this one. We've been talking about diets. Well, we talk about diets a lot in this group, but we've really been kicking it up a notch this month because the noise gets louder in January. So we talked a little bit last week about how diets can't fix our gut. We've talked about how diets can't fix our hormones because they don't get to that root cause. So if you haven't heard my videos on gut and hormone, go back and watch from last week. But also, diets can actually do more harm than good. And I usually get a big what when I say this, but let me explain. They do more harm than good because mentally, they have us obsessing about foods, the yes or no lists in our head, and our perceived consequences in our mind of what's going to happen to us if we eat said foods, like foods from the no list. So it can negatively impact our relationship with food in a big way. So I want to talk today. There's actually a study that came out, and you guys, I'm going to break it down into simplified terms for you over this coffee chat. This is something that I'm really excited about because there's actually proof to what I'm saying. So I want to share a little bit about this study and what it means for our perceptions. It's about how our perception of certain foods can actually have a greater psychological and physiological impact on our body than the actual content of the food. So it's what we think the food's going to do to our body actually has more of a physical effect on our body than just the food itself. So let me break it down for you. What we believe to be true about certain foods have a greater impact on our body. So what we think, okay, for example, we think XYZ is going to do this to our body. So we're perceiving something and it's actually having a greater effect on us than if we just ate it in the first place. So the stress is causing more damage to our body than just having the food. So let me go into this a little further. So our body metabolizes food in certain ways, and stress has a huge effect on our metabolism. So the study that I'm going to break down for you is called the glucose metabolism response to perceived sugar intake. I'm going to break all of that down for you. It sounds long and kind of overwhelming, but don't lose me in all this technical stuff because I want to make it simplified for you guys. So don't worry, it's my job to break this stuff down for you, and hopefully I do a good job at it. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to leave them in the comments and let me know, and I'd be happy to come back and kind of explain anything for you guys. Okay, so the results of the study I'm going to go through with you, and exactly why working on your relationship with food is so important, and why I work through this process with all of you guys using the framework inside of Finding Food Freedom. So if you don't know what my program is, or you'd like to learn more, or you'd like to talk with me and chat with me one-on-one, then definitely leave me a comment below and just just put coffee chat or a coffee emoji, and I'll reach out to you, and we can always chat about this stuff. So put coffee chat or coffee in the comments. Okay, so the enormous amount of stress that people carry around daily about food in our body can actually show up in our blood work, you guys, and manifest itself in physical symptoms through our GI system, through gas, bloating, hormonal imbalances, adrenal, thyroid issues, the whole 9 yards, you guys. And what this means is that working on our relationship with food in our body is essential. It's essential to our physical, emotional, and mental health. So let's get into the deets of the study. Don't have a lot of time this morning because I have to get to the airport and catch a flight. But that's why we're having this a little earlier this morning. But I don't want to miss going through this study with you because I feel it's super important, and it's just the mind-blowing information that I knew in my heart, but now there's a study to prove it. So let's get to the deets, and don't worry, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to make it as super easy and understandable and give you a few takeaways so that you can take them with you, as I always do after these trainings, and chew on them a little. Because I realize so much of our relationship with food affects us, and our perceptions of food actually impact us physically. I've known this for a long time, but I think this is really cool information that I'm going to share with you guys. So here it is in real application today, not just through clinical experience. Look, I've seen this, you guys. I've seen this multiple times in working with people, working with women. But now there's a study to show that what we think, our perception of whether or not a food is good or bad, so the food rules, actually impacts you on a metabolic level. Guys, this is huge. Okay, I'm not going to get all woo-woo on you guys today. And I'm not saying things like throw all caution to the wind and just eat whatever, okay? So that's not what I'm saying, but let's dig in to the truth. So when I saw this moment, I had this feeling of like, finally, it was like relief came over me because we fight so much of this in the medical world. So finally, there's research to what I've been seeing go on for years and years with you guys. So backing up my clinical experience with what I've witnessed when it actually comes to how our body responds to food when we have beliefs in our mind, diet brain, right, about those foods and what they're going to do to our bodies. So for those of you that want to get real nerdy with me and you want to read the study, comment study below, and I will send you the link to the study. And I'll share that study with you guys if you want to really get into the nitty-gritty and see the details. But the results, it was so brilliant, honestly, how someone created the structure to the test in the study, and the results were in alignment with intuitive eating, with health at every size, and the framework, you guys, really defining food freedom inside my coaching program. So this study reconfirmed that our anxieties around food really impact us on a biological level. And so that's what this is all about. So let's jump to the basics of this test. I'm going to break down the science, easy to understand. Okay, the study is called the Glucose Metabolism's Response to Perceived Sugar Intake More Than Actual Sugar Intake. Okay, that's a lot. Let's break down the title first. Okay, so all sugars are consumed, carbohydrates. And if you guys are jumping on with me, I'm just getting to the deets of the study. So all sugars are consumed, break down into the body as glucose. So all carbs, every carb that we eat breaks down into the body as glucose. And this happens so the food can be digested, so it can be absorbed, so our bodies can actually use those sugars that break down from the carbohydrates. So that's called metabolism. And what happens is our bodies actually use those sugars or they store them for later. So perceived sugar intake. This process is responding to more intensely. So how much sugar you think you're eating rather than the amount you're actually eating. Okay, so the point of this study was for researchers to see really whether or not our psychological response to how we think about eating certain foods would actually impact us physiologically. So in other words, our whole body response. So in this case, we're talking about raising our blood sugar. That was what this study was about. And because currently sugar consumption is the most widely accepted factor in explaining blood sugar fluctuation. So highs and lows and all of that kind of stuff. Let's talk about how the people actually got tested. Okay, so here's how the test was set up. It took individuals that had type 2 diabetes, and there were two different groups. So one group over here and one group over here. We had a control group and what we call a hypothesis group. And what they did with the two groups is they all had type 2 diabetes. So they split them up and they gave them beverages. Now here's the kick. The beverages were relabeled and they gave these individuals, okay, so one group had beverages labeled low sugar, great for diabetics, etc. Okay? And the label said, the other label, this label said zero added sugar, sugar-free, no sugar, great for diabetics, all of that stuff, right? All the things. And then the other group, guess what theirs said? Theirs said high in sugar, 30 grams of sugar, etc., right? So the reality is both groups were drinking the same thing. Okay, so everyone drank their drink, and then everyone tested their blood sugar before drinking the drink, and then tested after drinking the drink. Interestingly enough, this group over here that believed that their drink was of higher sugar content had more elevated blood sugars than the people that believed their drink was lower, even though they both had the exact same drink. So this was ultimately saying that what we think about what we're eating, or our perception, rather than the objective nutritional information, right, that's out there, the differences in food can impact the way our body reacts through metabolizing this food. So this is basically saying the belief or the way that you think about a food and how it impacts your body will affect the way your body ultimately responds to that food. And this was showing up for these people in elevated blood glucose levels. So y'all, the people that thought the drink was good for them and the people that thought the drink was bad for them, their body responded in two different ways. And that is mind-blowing to me. I mean, it was, but it wasn't, because I knew this, right? I've known this all along. So the research was just released. It is so fascinating. And it's finally being put together so that I can show you guys, and I'm going to shout this from the rooftops. This isn't made up. It's actual evidence, you guys, that what you think about a food impacts the way your body responds to that food. I'm dying here because I'm thinking about all the food sensitivity tests that I see from clients that they bring in and they tell me, well, I can't have this big list of foods because in their minds, they've had this test and it says, these are foods I'm sensitive to, so I have to cut them out. And I've been to all the naturopaths, and this is a list of foods that I have to avoid. Not to say, you guys, that some people don't have reactions to some foods. So I don't want to like not say that or downplay people with food reactions, especially for those people that did have, type 2 diabetes, for instance, and how your body responds to blood sugar. But the point is, if you think something's good for you or you think something's bad, your body's going to respond differently, which is really, really, really cool to see how our emotions and how we perceive food is linked to that nervous system. I talked about the vagus nerve a little bit last week. If you missed that training, when I talk about digestion and how our mind, our gut-brain connection, go back and listen to that. It's incredibly important for those of you guys, if you watch this today, if you watch the replay later and you have a chronic illness or you have perceived reactions about foods, about certain foods that you're eating and or symptoms that you're experiencing, this is going to be so, 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 so important for you to understand what this study is telling us. So if you have a chronic condition of any kind, I just want you to give me the hand emoji and let me know in the signals. Just give me the emoji or say yes, and I'll reach out to you. But if you have any kind of underlying condition and you've ever heard that there's a certain food that you should or shouldn't be eating because you have a certain health condition, you need to work on your relationship with food, because this study shows the perception of whether or not you think a food is good or bad is going to impact your health and the way that your body metabolizes that food, which means, honestly, you guys, this could be the difference between having a flare-up in response to a certain food or not, purely based on your thoughts of that food being good or bad for you. So let's chat about why this happens. Let's get into some gentle nutrition today, and an evidence-based piece of this, and figure out what's actually happening in the body to make this happen. So I talk with a lot of my clients about the gut-brain axis. If you missed our training last week, definitely want to go check out that. If you missed it and you want to see it, hit gut in the comments and I will get back to you and I'll send you that training. So I talk a lot about the gut-brain axis with my clients and the vagus nerve. I know someone last week said, tell us more about the vagus nerve. So if you're hopping on today, I'm glad you're here. Say where you're from, let me know, leave me an emoji. And we're talking about the vagus nerve and how it affects digestion. So when you have anxiety, it goes down to the vagus nerve, this bundle of nerves that's kind of right here around your diaphragm. Okay, and you get gut issues, or it goes the opposite way, and you have gut issues and your neurotransmitters are firing, and this affects how our nutrients are ultimately being absorbed in our body and how food is moving through our body. It's going to impact our digestion. So this is all part of this gut-brain connection. Our nervous system, your emotional and your mental state are also linked to this autonomic nervous system. So specifically, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic responses to glucose, for instance, in this test. So in other words, when I'm talking about parasympathetic and sympathetic, I'm talking about fight or flight versus rest and digest. So if you're experiencing stress around a certain food, so in this study, for example, people thought that they were drinking this unhealthy drink. It's really bad for them, right? Versus people that thought that they were drinking a healthy option for their diabetes. If people think they're drinking something healthy, probably their rest and digest part of their nervous system is being stimulated, which means their body is producing more stomach acid, which means their body is ready to digest the food that they put in. They're relaxed, so they're not tense. They're not anxious, which is why I talk a lot about deep breathing before we eat with a lot of my clients that have digestive issues. You're not so tense, you're not so anxious, and you're setting your body up to produce more of those digestive juices to get your body ready. So if you're feeling tense and anxious and you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm getting ready to eat something that's unhealthy for me. This is something I shouldn't be eating. Da, da, da. Is this familiar to any of you guys? Let me know. Just shoot me an emoji and let me know. And then you go through the fight or flight response, which is very different than rest and digest. When your nervous system goes into fight or flight mode, guess what happens? Dun, da, da, da. Cortisol is produced. This cortisol I'm always talking about, right? Our stress hormones. Cortisol is released. It releases blood sugar. Cortisol causes our pancreas to release blood sugar. And now your blood sugars are shooting up before you've even eaten the food. So I want you to kind of wrap your minds around that. I think it's really cool how our perception changes the way our bodies respond to food. If this isn't an argument for the very first pillar of finding food freedom, then guys, I don't know what is. Ditching the diet mentality and learning to trust your body. If this doesn't encourage people to start looking at their relationship with food and begin to start normalizing food, you're ignoring a huge, huge piece of the way that your body functions. So now we're actually seeing in a scientific study that this belief and our perceptions around food impact the way that we can do diabetes management, for example. And right now, the mainstream program for diabetes is diet and exercise, and that's it. That's it. Sugar management, not eating certain foods, telling people that they can't have whatever they want. They can't have certain foods. And they're totally missing out on the psychological intervention programs that we could be incorporating, and we could be working on our relationship with food and removing the food rules. So it could be an argument, you guys, for the obesity epidemic. There's a belief out there that we're becoming more diabetic because of the way people are eating. Type 2 diabetes is considered the #1 health risk being considered right now worldwide. And when you think about this trend of dieting and diet culture that we live in, year after year, food is becoming more and more good versus bad. And certain foods are becoming worse and becoming worse for us, right? And we have some really strong beliefs out there right now in diet culture in the wellness world about what food is good and what food is bad, what food is healthy and what food is unhealthy. And I would have to argue after reading this and after studying this and after looking at trends throughout the past 20 years that we globally are becoming more chronically ill because of the foods, or is it our perception of the food? A little something to chew on today when we get off of here. Caroline Dunner talks about this concept in her book, The F-It Diet. I don't throw around F-bombs. That's just not my thing. But I do recommend this book. What she talks about is how diet culture and its recent phenomenon, maybe the last 40 years or so, but she calls it an epidemic, or what the system's calling it, didn't start until we started having this newer version of diet culture. It started especially in the US, and we have a lot more research in the US than we do in other places, at least. So the US is the most commonly studied country when it comes to the obesity epidemic. So more people in this country have dieted, and they dieted harder and harder, and they come up with more diets, and more people keep dieting, and more chronic health conditions are increasing in this country. And the more overall average body weight of everyone in this country is increasing along with dieting. Another thing to chew on. I am laying it out for you guys today, and this is why we're ditching diets together in this group. So the argument is there's more chronic disease because there are more people in this obese BMI category and chronically ill. Don't get me started on BMI. You know, I'll miss my flight. We already know that dieting does impact our weight and our metabolism, and this is something that's completely ignored. So if you would like to learn more about the BMI, just comment BMI in the comments and I will get back to you. So I also want to say that if you see an integrative doctor or if you see a nutritionist and they're not talking about this study seriously, or they don't know about this study, they're ignoring one of the root causes of inflammation, you guys, in the body, the gut-brain axis. When you're in a chronically stressed state, this is the epitome of inflammation. So look at the research on cardiovascular disease. Look at the research on all these types of chronic autoimmune diseases that are cropping up, these mystery autoimmune diseases. They need to be talking about this with you. And if they're not talking about the gut-brain axis and our relationship with food, they're not doing their job, because what they're doing is saying you have this chronic health condition, you should lose weight. Or my favorite, and I hate this literally with every bit of my body, is they tell you that your BMI is within a certain range, and if you don't have any medical conditions, that you should lose weight. Oh, your blood work is fine, but you should lose weight. God forbid that you do have a health condition and they look at this chart and they tell you to fix it by losing weight. Losing weight alone is not going to fix your stress. Write that one down. It's not going to fix your anxiety. It's not going to fix your gut-brain connection, the axis. And all the inflammation is existing because of this. So if you went to the doctor and you were told to lose weight and you walked out of that office and you became anxious and you became stressed, they are part of the problem. So what do you think this does? The stress, the anxiety, and by default, what it does to your inflammation. I hope that you're still with me, and I hope that you're hearing this information and why I tell you these things, because I want to educate you. I want you to become super liberated when you hear this, super empowered, because that's knowledge is power. So if you're on the fence, I hope this opens your eyes a little bit today to learn more about intuitive eating and tuning into your body. I hope you're like, okay, here's another checkbox in my no diet life. No good versus bad, no food rules. And I'm really excited, y'all, about the theory that's been proven now, this study that was done on a really hot topic, type 2 diabetes. Now, for any of you health practitioners out there, I realize that this was a pilot study. So this was a small study. And what this means, you guys, because it was a pilot study and somebody took the risk to actually look into this stuff and study it, pilot studies mean it's the beginning of a ton of research to come on this topic. And does this prove everything? No, but this is a super, super important study for us, those of us in the non-diet world. So you know why? Because more people are going to start talking about it. And that's what we need. More people talking about this and less people talking about Noom. This is opening the door for deeper research, connection, our relationship with food and chronic health issues, and connection and how we see diet culture and rising with chronic illness across the world, globally. So if any of you do go and you do read this study, again, type study if you want the study and I will send it to you. You'll see the intro, and there are other studies being cited. Researchers do still talk about caloric restriction. So if this is going to trigger you at all, what I would suggest is just you skip straight to the abstract and the conclusion and the findings, because thank God for the researchers. However, not all the researchers have jumped on the non-diet bandwagon yet. So almost there, you guys, but not all there yet. So we do need more research in this area. It was a small pilot study, but this opens the door for so many more studies now. So let me know if this was interesting or if this was valuable to you today. Would you like to see more studies broken down, hear more things, more proof behind what we're learning? And if so, I just want you to comment yes in the comments. You guys, there are so many more studies that I could break down. You can hear me getting all nerdy and giddy talking about it. But in terms of mindset and psychology around food that are all very cool too. So even if there's a study that is not non-diet, okay? If there's something that's not non-diet and you want to know what I think about it, let me know. Let me know. Just send me a message and I'd be happy to break that study down. So if you enjoyed the conversation, this coffee chat this morning, please share it with somebody that you feel needs to hear it or could benefit from it. Maybe you have family or maybe you have friends. And consider leaving me a comment below to let me know what you thought about this. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments on this training. You know, this is going to help more people. The more comments you leave, it'll help more people find this group. The more you share these trainings with people, we can share and spread this message of ditching diets together. You guys, thank you so much for joining me today. That's the one thing that I'd ask for you to do is leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought and share with somebody that needs to hear this today. I got to go hop on a flight, but I love you guys and I'll see you on the next training.